taking off the gloves. I've had enough, it's in my blood. I was born for this.
Welcome to the show, guys. Joseph Camo here, the fantasy football counselor. Got a very special show today. I want to talk about what we learned this past week 14 in fantasy football, but more importantly, I want to talk about the disrespects toward fantasy football players that is coming from actual real-life NFL players. Yes, the actual disrespect that's coming from these athletes, and it's basically affecting a lot of people on social media. So let's talk about that. Well, first of all, what did we learn? We learned that Jonathan Taylor is an absolute stud. This is something I've been calling for a very long time. We learned that Lamar Jackson still got it. We know that Derrick Henry is the greatest running back in the NFL right now. We learned that Kareem Hunt, it continues to be a pest with Nick Chubb. And I know Nick Chubb had, 24 points PPR, but he got hoarded a touchdown. I know a lot of people lost their league because of this. So we learned a lot from week 14. It was a real telling tale of how this year has been. We learned that David Montgomery actually has a breakout. He's had 3 consecutive weeks. We've learned a lot, and I can continue to go on about what we've learned, but I wanted to focus today specifically on the disrespect towards fantasy football players. Yes, we are people too. In fact, there's this hidden kind of unspoken rule that NFL athletes are better human beings than us players. Well, to be honest with you, we're all human beings on this earth, and nobody's really better than anybody. Just because you have more money in your bank account doesn't make you a better human being than somebody else. And there's this prestige level that everybody seems to put NFL players on. Well, let me be the first person to tell you, because I've met NFL athletes, and some of them are nice, but they're just normal people. They're human. They put on their pants the same way we do, right? They eat the same way we do. There's nothing extraordinary other than obviously their talents, right? They're good players. They do well, right? They're a certain type of breed of athlete, right? Because there's only so many handful of quarterbacks. There's only X amount of Tom Brady's, X amount of Lamar Jackson's, X amount of Russell Wilson's on the planet. I get it. They offer an elite skill, which makes them a high-paid player, right? Because value and scarcity equals money, right? That's why there's only X amount of LeBron James available in this world. That's why he gets paid so much, because he's special, right? He's special in that sense. But in regards to, the way you treat people, right? You got to take a look at us and say, hey, nobody's better than us, okay? I understand they've got abilities, but we're humans too. So there's a problem going on in the fantasy football community. And, part of it stems with us kind of going at the players and saying, hey, you didn't perform well on my fantasy team. But what the athletes don't realize is that fantasy football is one of the main reasons that they are even relevant. Without fantasy football, a lot of these players, we wouldn't even know they existed. Guys like Alexander Madison, Mecole Hardman. Yeah, they're well known in their communities and on their teams, but a lot of people don't know who they are that don't play fantasy. And another thing, it's I would never watch a Cleveland Browns game, but if you've got, let's say, a Cleveland Browns player invested, or you've got them on your fantasy team, you're more likely to watch that particular game. So understand, guys, fantasy is very important, and players need to understand this. So what ended up happening with Josh Jacobs, and this is a story I got to explain, for no apparent reason other than probably a bunch of built up I would say anxiety and anger issues that he has, or maybe he's got a lot of resentment towards fantasy players. But I saw a post, and people messaged me on this post. They says, F yo fantasy teams is basically what he said. And he had a middle finger up in his post on his Instagram story mode. And what he also did in the most crucial time of fantasy, through the fantasy season, playoff time, right? A time where we need to know if players are playing so that we can plug them into our lineups. He came out and said that he was not going to play when actually the news report came out that he was going to play, and it said F your fantasy team. So he lied in his story mode, deceiving the public, making people believe that he may not play in that game, right? So this is a big problem. I'll tell you why. Again, a lot of people have a lot of money riding, let's say in a fantasy league. A lot of people are, in there for bragging rights or a championship trophy. There's a lot of real human beings like myself, like yourself, armchair quarterbacks, doctors, lawyers, police officers. I have people in all types of trades and professions that play fantasy football. Real human beings, firefighters, nurses, doctors, it doesn't matter. Plumbers, whatever, machine shop owners, entrepreneurs. there's a lot of people that play, real human beings that want to win, and then you go and deceive the entire fantasy football community. That is wrong on every sense of the term. So what ends up happening is basically he posted this, so I reposted it, and I called him a little bitch for doing it, which is obviously the truth because he lied, deceived, and he's not respecting the community which I just spoke about, right? Real people, right? Nobody's better than anybody else. He disrespects the community, so I go out and say, that's a bitch move, man. And again, it's what blows my mind here is that the fantasy football analysts, the guys that deliver you the bullshit cookie cutter advice, these a-holes, they didn't come out and basically stick up for you. They didn't say, Josh Jacobs, that was wrong. They didn't tag him and say, hey, we're the fantasy ambassadors. We're the white-collar sheep analysts. We want to stick up for the community. Nobody stuck up for the community. The only person stuck up for the community is myself. Now, there's other people that came out after the fact and said, hey, you know what, we support you, Joe. A lot of people DM me, say, hey, man. And believe it or not, I don't encourage you guys talking bad about players or messaging them or going to their store. I do not encourage that. But I ended up checking Josh Jacobs' story underneath, and a lot of this wasn't predicated on me calling him a bitch and doing a post about it. But I saw a lot of people actually in his comments saying, you screwed my fantasy team. How dare you disrespect fans? This is even before. And these are just real fans, real people that actually think that it's actually disrespectful because they're leaked. So I don't encourage this at all. But let me tell you this. So I posted this and he DMs me. And I could actually probably pull up the actual DM here of what he said. I can quote. Actually, let me pull it up here on the screen. I'm going to post it here on the screen, and I'll tell you exactly what he said. And again, this is beyond disrespectful. Again, I had not messaged Jacobs. Again, I'd met him at the when he came in the NFL draft. I'd met him. He seemed like a super nice guy. So he messaged me. He goes, say, I think it means cousin. I'm not his cousin. You doing all the talking, but he spelled talking wrong because I guess he missed the A. I guess he's so angry he forgot to spell. Show me I'm a bitch. You know where to find me. Set it up. First of all, I don't know where to find him. I don't know where he lives. I'm assuming he wants me to go to the stadium. Okay, I don't know. So I replied back because this was at 5 o'clock in the morning. So I'm assuming he gets up and trains at 5 a.m., right? I'm talking Eastern time. I go, set up a boxing match, but you would get smashed in the fight, though. Now, let's talk about this. It would be challenging for me because he's a professional athlete. He's obviously in shape, but I would get in shape, and I've got a solid boxing foundation and mixed martial arts background and karate background. So I would get in shape for this. I would find the best nutritionist, and I would beat him down in a boxing match, whether it be exhibition or paid, whatever it may be. I would do that. So I reply back at 11 a.m., right? 4 or 5 hours after he messaged me. I said, set up the boxing match. You would get smashed in the boxing match, though. And he said, say less and it sounds good. So basically, say less and it sounds good could be interpreted in a couple ways. Joe, don't talk. It sounds good that way if you don't talk. Say less and it sounds good. Or it could mean say yes. Say less and it sounds good. Yes, sounds good. I'm down. That's basically, yes. And I said, let's go. And he had seen the message. So I'm like, that's cool. So I let the community know that Josh Jacobs, and everybody interpreted it as it's on. It's on. There's going to be a boxing match here. What does Jacobs do? He blocks me for no reason other than the fact that people were probably messaging him and is beyond annoyed with the fantasy football community. Going back to the facts here and understanding that his popularity and the fact that we're even giving him attention is predicated because of fantasy football. We are real people, right? We have real fantasy teams. We are real people, real communities, and we basically want him to play because our fantasy teams depend on it. And he disrespects that, okay? So the point I'm trying to make here is he's being a real wuss. Okay, I'm down for a boxing match. I'm down any day, any time. Right, give me a couple months training. Obviously, I need to get in shape. But the amount of disrespect with these athletes, the way they are treating the fantasy community, has to stop. Okay, again, like I said, nobody's better than anybody. I know the white collar analysts think they're better than me. They think they're better than everybody else that gives fantasy advice because they work for a network, whatever it may be. This has to stop. It has to stop now. And then I saw another thing from Deebo Samuel saying, I don't care about your fantasy teams. I understand he was hurt. And probably people are messaging him saying, hey, man, why aren't you playing? But, dude, get on the field, okay? And if you can't get on the field, tell us you're not on the field, whatever it may be. But the fact of the matter is we need to be tapped in. And that's why, guys, make sure you guys subscribe. I typically do a last-minute news notes throughout the season. I kind of haven't done one the past couple weeks. But listen, I do a last-minute news and notes every Sunday morning to keep you guys up to date on who's starting and sitting. And if they are questionable, make sure you guys sit them. So week 14, it was a crazy week. And, again, there's a lot of drama with these athletes and these personalities. So I want to warn you guys that, try to be nice to these athletes. When you ask them, don't be rude. Don't say, hey, man, like, F you. You know, I kind of do that because they disrespect the community. But just be nice to them. Say, hey, man, like, just be honest with them if you want to talk to them. And again, there's no point in messaging these guys. I mean, it is obviously getting under their skin, and there's so many of us that obviously it's relevant. They're talking about it, right? But at the end of the day, man, it's like, don't invest in players that don't really care about your fantasy team, right? I know there's a lot of good players that play fantasy. I know it's hard, but you know, if they don't care about your fantasy team, they should care about their stats. And that's what kills me here. They have to care about fantasy because it's directly proportional to their output. So if you don't care about fantasy, it's like basically saying you don't care about your stats, because that really is your stats, it's your legacy. So there should be some caring about fantasy because it's directly, you know, parallel or whatever, in line with your points. So at the end of the day here, I'm still down to fight Josh Jacobs. I mean, I think this was total BS, the fact that he blocked me for no reason, other than after he agrees to fight me. Imagine that, right? And then, actually, I want to end this off here. He did put something in his story mode that says something like, our time will come, or the time will come. So maybe he wants to box in the future. Either way, blocking me just doesn't do anything. Like, I didn't bug him. You know, I didn't harass him. I didn't bug him at all, other than just posting the facts, and he was responding to it. So based on, again, what I've seen as well, it looks like Josh Jacobs does have some anger issues, clearly, that he needs to resolve. So anyway, it is what it is. Guys, make sure you guys smash thumbs up. Leave any questions below. Let me know if you'd like to see the fight, you know, Jacobs versus Joe Camo, the counselor. I think it would be a good one. And yeah, crazy times, man. Crazy times. Make sure you guys are subscribed. I'm going to be doing a preview show coming up tomorrow, and of course the starts and sits going into playoff rounds for a lot of people in week 15. Yeah, crazy week, guys. And again, I'm down to fight Jacobs any day, any time, any place. Let's go. We'll talk soon.